She pressed a folded note into the photographer's hand during the reception toast. Not her phone. Not a drink order. A folded note, the kind you write with a pen, the kind you fold in thirds because you don't want anyone reading it over your shoulder. I watched it happen from the other side of the room. The photographer crossed the floor, stopped beside me, and held it out without a word. I looked at it, then at him. He just shrugged and walked away. My name was on the outside of it. My name, Owen, written in handwriting I recognized. I'd been holding my glass of water for about 20 minutes because the bar felt too far and I didn't want to explain myself to anyone. My ex-girlfriend was getting married 40 feet away. Her mother was the woman who had asked me to be here tonight. And now there was a note. I didn't open it right away. I probably should have. But some part of me already understood that whatever was written inside it was going to rearrange something. The way certain mornings do before you've even checked your phone. So I stood there with the folded note in my hand, the wedding band moving through a slow song behind me, and made myself wait. I was good at waiting. That was most of my job. Waiting for plaster to dry. Waiting for the grain to tell you which direction it wanted to go. Waiting for old things to show you what they needed before you touched them. I waited. Then I opened it. 3 months before that night, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail. I was up on a ladder at the time. One hand braced against the top of a doorframe I was trying to level, the other reaching for my phone before the second ring finished. Is this Owen Hale? The voice was composed. Careful, the way some people go careful on purpose, like they've trained themselves out of whatever they sounded like before. I said it was. This is Margot Calloway, Nadia's mother. I came down off the ladder. Nadia Calloway had been my girlfriend for just under 2 years, ending about 14 months before that call. We hadn't ended badly, which in some ways was harder than ending badly. There was nothing to point at. No final argument. No discovered lie. Just two people who were good to each other and going in directions that didn't quite overlap anymore. Both of them too honest to pretend otherwise. I still thought about her. That's the truth. Not obsessively. Not the way you think about something you're still trying to fix. More like the way you sometimes notice the chair that used to sit in the corner before you moved it. The space it left. I remember you, I said, which was an understatement. Margot Calloway was the kind of woman who walked into a room and quietly changed the air pressure. Not through volume, through precision. She asked questions that landed somewhere between the question you answered and the one you hadn't thought to ask yourself. She had dark eyes that stayed on you a half-second longer than comfortable, and a habit of going completely still when she was thinking something through. The one time I'd had dinner at her house, she'd asked me what I was working on. I'd told her about a Victorian on Alderton Street, rotted porch columns, original crown molding I was trying to save. She had asked 3 follow-up questions that showed she'd actually listened to the first answer. Nadia used to say her mother noticed everything. I believed it. Nadia's getting married, Margot said. In 12 weeks. I wanted you to know from me. I leaned against the doorframe I'd just been leveling. I appreciate that. There's a second thing, she said. I waited. The wedding is at Haverfield House. It's a venue about 40 minutes outside the city. Restored estate property, old garden, about 200 guests. She paused. My husband and I divorced 6 years ago. He'll be there with his current partner. Most of the people in that room have known us as a couple for decades, and he will make a production of arriving with someone because that is who he has always been. Another pause. Shorter. I don't want to walk in alone. The silence after that wasn't awkward. It was considered. I'm asking you to come as my date for the evening, she said. I know what that sounds like. I know it's unusual. I will pay for your suit, your time, whatever you think is reasonable. You don't owe me anything by accepting. And you don't owe me an explanation if you'd rather not. I looked at my ladder, at the door frame that wasn't quite level yet. When's the wedding? I asked. I didn't tell anyone. That's the first thing. My friend Marcus, who I'd eaten lunch with twice a week for 4 years, would have had opinions. My sister would have had more opinions and a follow-up call. So I kept it inside the job, inside the early mornings and the dust and the particular silence of a house being put back together. I met Margot for coffee 8 days after the phone call. A place on the west side she suggested, small, the kind of corner spot where nobody was there to be seen. She was already seated when I arrived, hands around a mug, hair pulled back. Wearing a gray coat, I didn't see her take off the entire hour. I want to be direct with you. she said before I'd fully sat down. Good, I said. I prefer it. The briefest shift in her expression. Not quite a smile. Something quieter than that. This is a practical arrangement. I'm not asking for a performance. I don't need you to be charming. I need you to be present, which from what I remember of you, shouldn't require much effort. You don't need me to pretend to be in love with you. God, no, she said. And that one came out fast enough that it was the first genuinely unguarded thing I'd heard from her. Then what are the rules? She considered this seriously, which I respected. Be yourself. Don't disappear to the bar. If someone asks how we know each other, tell them the true thing, that you did some renovation work on a property I own. That's not even a lie. She looked at her mug. Be someone I could have plausibly brought. Are you worried about Nadia? The question landed between us and she let it sit for a moment. Nadia knows I'm bringing someone. She doesn't know who. And if she figures it out, then she figures it out. Her jaw was set, but not hard. More like a person who had already carried a thing so far they'd stopped being surprised by the weight. My daughter is happy. She's marrying a man who is kind to her. I have been watching her walk toward this wedding for 2 years and I have done nothing but support her. What I need tonight is one night where I don't have to do it while standing alone on the opposite side of a room from Richard and whoever he's brought. There it was. Not a scheme. Not a game. Just a woman who had run out of energy for being brave and visible and alone all at the same time. I said I'd be there. The suit was charcoal. She'd said charcoal would work with the color scheme, which was ivory and some kind of deep sage. I owned one good pair of dress shoes, black, and I polished them the night before in my kitchen with the radio on low. I picked her up at 6. She opened the door before I knocked, which meant she'd been watching for the car. She wore a deep burgundy dress, floor length, fitted at the shoulder, the kind of thing that made her look like she had decided exactly what she was doing and had no second thoughts about it. Her hair was down, which I hadn't expected. Dark, just past her collarbone, slight wave to it. She looked at me for a fraction of a second longer than necessary. Then she said, "You clean up well." "You mentioned charcoal," I said. "I did." She picked up a small clutch from the entry table. "Shall we?" We drove most of the way without much conversation. Not the tense kind of quiet. The kind that comes between people who don't feel the need to fill space. She asked once about the Victorian on Alderton Street. I told her I'd finally matched the original crown molding profile. She said that sounded satisfying. I said it was. At one point, the road curved and the last light of the evening came through her window at a low angle, and I noticed that she had a habit I'd seen once before at that dinner years ago. When she was thinking, she rested her thumb against her lower lip without seeming to know she was doing it. Not nervous, just processing. I looked back at the road. Haverfield House sat at the end of a long gravel drive lined with white lights strung through old beech trees. The kind of venue that knew what it was and didn't oversell it. Stone walls, iron lanterns. A garden terrace that opened onto the back where the ceremony had already happened and the reception was now beginning. We arrived as guests were moving from the ceremony space toward the main hall. I holds the car door. She stepped out and straightened once. Just once, the kind of thing you do when you're putting the last piece of yourself into place before you walk into something. "Richard just arrived," she said quietly. 10 o'clock. "Don't look." I didn't. We walked in side by side. I saw Nadia within the first 20 minutes. She was laughing with a group near the window, her dress catching the candlelight, a brightness around her that I'd always known was there and that now, standing 40 feet away, looked like it had been turned up several degrees. She was happy, genuinely happy. Her husband, a tall man named Callum, kept finding her hand without looking for it, the way you do when someone has become such a fixed point that reaching for them is automatic. I watched that once and looked away. Nadia hadn't seen me yet. Margot was at my side, carrying a glass of champagne she wasn't drinking much of, managing the room with a kind of quiet expertise that reminded me of the way she described what she needed from me. Presence, not performance. Richard found us about 40 minutes in. He was silver-haired, a little too bronzed for November, and moved like someone who had decided decades ago that he was the most important person at whatever gathering he entered. The woman beside him was younger, attentive, and seemed to be working hard at something. "Margot," he said, with the tone of a man performing warmth for an audience he'd already checked on. "Richard." She didn't look away from whoever she'd been speaking to. Then, when she'd finished her sentence, she turned. "You look well." His eyes moved to me, And this is Owen Hale, I said, and offered a handshake. Clean, neutral, just firm enough. Owen does architectural restoration, Margot said. We've been seeing each other for a few months. The sentence was smooth and unhurried and was, technically, a lie, and watching her deliver it with such complete composure was something I filed away. Richard looked at me the way certain men look at a house they're deciding isn't worth buying. Restoration, he said. Interesting work. It is, I said. He waited for me to be more impressed by the conversation. I wasn't. He moved on. After he left, Margot let out a breath that was so quiet I only caught it because I was standing close. You didn't flinch, she said. Didn't need to. She looked up at me with a steadiness I was starting to recognize as her baseline. But underneath it, something that might have been relief. I saw Nadia properly for the first time just before the toast. She was coming out of the garden corridor with 2 glasses of water and nearly walked into me. She stopped. The glasses stayed steady in her hands, which said something about her. Owen, congratulations, I said, and meant it. She looked at me for a moment, searching. Not angry, not uncomfortable, more like she was recalibrating something she hadn't fully prepared for. My mom asked you. She did. A small pause. Is that weird for you? A little, I said honestly. Is it weird for you? She thought about it. Really thought, which had always been something I admired about her. No, she said finally. Actually, no. She needed someone she could trust to be steady next to her tonight. That makes sense to me. She glanced toward the room where her mother was standing. She doesn't let many people be steady next to her. I didn't have an answer for that, so I didn't offer one. Be good to her tonight, Nadia said. It wasn't a warning. It was a request. I told her I would. She nodded and walked back into the reception, and I stood there in the corridor for a moment with the particular weight of something I couldn't quite name yet. The toast started at 8:30. Margot was standing near the far window, the candlelight doing something complicated to the burgundy of her dress, listening to Callum's best man with her arms loose at her sides, fully present in the way she did everything. I was watching her from about 20 feet away when the photographer came up beside me. He was young, mid-20s, camera hanging from one shoulder, moving with the low-profile efficiency of someone used to not being the thing anyone noticed. He stopped next to me without preamble and held out a folded note. From Mrs. Calloway, he said. I looked at it. When did she give you this? About 3 minutes ago. She asked me to wait until the toast started. He left. I stood there with the note. My name on the outside, written in handwriting that had a precision to it, narrow letters, small but very clear. The best man was saying something about Callum in college. The room was laughing. I looked at the note. Then I opened it. Inside, in that same narrow handwriting, I owe you an explanation. Not the one I gave you on the phone. The real one. I asked you because I trust you. I've watched you do your work carefully. I've seen how you treat old things that are falling apart. Not with pity, and not by pretending they're fine. You find what's worth keeping. I don't know how to do that for myself yet. But being in the same room with someone who knows how seemed like a start. You don't have to do anything with this. I just didn't want to go home tonight with it still unsaid. I read it twice. The toast finished. The room applauded. Someone near me clinked a glass and I barely heard it. I folded the note back along its original lines. Put it in the inside pocket of my jacket where it sat against my chest for the rest of the evening. I didn't cross the room immediately. I let myself stand with it for a few minutes first. Long enough to understand what was actually happening. Not what I wanted to be happening. Not the version I'd have written if someone had asked me before tonight to describe what a note from Margot Calloway might say. The actual thing. She wasn't asking for anything. She'd specifically said that. She was just handing me a true piece of herself and saying, here, this is what's underneath the coat I never take off. The composed voice, the careful questions. Old things that are falling apart. Not with pity, and not by pretending they're fine. I found her standing near the garden doors a few minutes later, alone for a moment, her champagne glass finally empty. I got your note, I said. She looked at me. No reading her expression right then. Just stillness. Okay, she said. I'm not going to pretend I'm not thinking about it. I didn't expect you to. A beat. I'm sorry if it was too much. It wasn't, I said. It was just honest. Something shifted. Small, almost imperceptible, but I caught it. The same quality of shift you feel when a door you've been adjusting all morning finally swings clear and holds. I don't know what to do with honest, she said quietly. I have spent most of my adult life being competent. That's different. I know. I looked out through the garden doors at the white lights in the beech trees. My job is mostly figuring out what someone built wrong the first time and deciding what to do about it. You can tear it all out and start fresh. Sometimes that's right. But sometimes what's underneath the damage is actually solid, and what it needed was just someone willing to take the time. She was quiet for long enough that I wondered if I'd said too much. Then she said, "Are you telling me I'm an old house? I'm telling you you're worth the time." The silence after that was different from the others, less contained, like something had been set down. We stayed through the first dance and the cake and the moment when Nadia pressed her face into Callum's shoulder at the end of a slow song. Both of them still, the whole room going soft around them. Margot watched it and her face did something private and complicated. I stood beside her and didn't say anything. When we finally stepped outside at just past 10, the air had gone cold and sharp. November doing what November does. She pulled her coat across her chest and exhaled, and the breath came out visible in the dark. "Richard left an hour ago," she said. I noticed. So technically, the practical part of the evening concluded at 9 o'clock. Technically, I said. Neither of us moved toward the car. "Why did you stay?" she asked. I looked at her, the low light from the lanterns along the drive catching the line of her jaw, the way she was holding herself, braced and still expecting disappointment in a way she probably didn't even realize showed. "Because I wanted to," I said. She looked at me for a long moment. Then, for the first time all night, fully and completely, she smiled. Not the controlled version. Not the one calibrated for rooms. The actual one. It lasted about 4 seconds. Then she looked forward and said, "We should get the car." But she didn't move first. And neither did I. The next 3 weeks were complicated in the way that only simple things can be. We had coffee twice. Both times it was casual, easy to explain as two adults following up after an unusual evening. Both times I left thinking about the note in my jacket pocket, which I had not thrown away. The second time, she asked to see the Victorian on Alderton Street. I almost said no, not because I didn't want her there, but because showing someone where you work is different from having coffee. Just showing them how you think, what you care about, the parts of the job that aren't finished yet and won't look like much until they are. "I'd like to see it," she said. "If that's all right." "Saturday morning," I said. "It's a mess." "I don't mind mess." She showed up Saturday at 8 with 2 coffees and her gray coat and looked at the unfinished porch columns and the exposed ceiling beams and the section of plaster I'd pulled away to show the original lathe underneath. "This part," she said, touching the lathe with one finger. "How old is it?" "Probably 1890s. Maybe earlier." She looked at it carefully, the way she looked at things she was deciding to take seriously. "You could have just replaced the whole wall." "Could have. But you didn't." "No point covering something that still works," I said. "You just have to know what you're looking at." She held her coffee with both hands and looked around the room, at the parts that were raw and the parts that were being put back, at the toolboxes and the drop cloths and the slow archaeology of it all. "I did something after the wedding," she said. Her voice was different from the careful version. Quieter. "I booked an appointment with a therapist. First one in about 12 years. She paused. "I thought you should know." I didn't say anything for a moment. "How was it?" "Uncomfortable," she said. "Probably correct. Usually means it's working." She looked at me sideways. "Are you always this steady?" "Only when I know what I'm standing on," I said. She held my gaze for a beat. 2. The morning light coming through the unfinished windows. The dust still settling. 2 coffees going lukewarm between us. "Owen," she said. "Yeah." "I want to tell you something and I need you to not handle it. I need you to just hear it." "Okay." She looked down at her coffee. "When Nadia was with you, I noticed things about the way you were. Not inappropriately. I wasn't," she stopped. Started again. "But I noticed. The way you listened to her. The way you didn't take up more space than you needed. The way you fixed the hinge on our back gate when it was sticking and didn't say anything about it, you just fixed it." I remembered that. I'd noticed it catching when she'd come outside to get the mail. And then they ended and I thought, well, that was that. And then you were on the other end of the phone when I needed someone. And you came. Her jaw worked. And I don't know what that means or what I'm allowed to want it to mean, because you are a decade younger than me and you were with my daughter, Margot. She stopped. "I fixed the gate," I said, "because I noticed it catching." She looked up at me. I noticed it because I was paying attention. And I was paying attention to that house because there was a reason to. I set my coffee down on the nearest clear surface. I came that night because when you asked, I wanted to. Not because I was doing someone a favor. Because I wanted to be there. The room was quiet. Just the creak of the old house settling around us the way old things do. I don't know what the right speed is for this, she said. Neither do I. I need to go slowly. I know how to go slowly, I said. It's actually most of what I do. She let out a breath that wasn't quite a laugh and wasn't quite a cry but landed somewhere between them. And for a second she covered her eyes with her hand the way you do when something hits you sideways and you don't want the room to see your face arrange itself around it. When she lowered her hand, her expression was different. Not composed. Something more honest than composed. She stepped forward and I didn't move away and she took hold of the front of my jacket with both hands. Not pulling. Just holding. Like she needed something fixed to stand against. I put my arms around her. Carefully. The way you do when you don't want to overwhelm something fragile. We stood like that in the unfinished room. The morning coming through the old glass windows. The house half put back together around us. Neither of us said anything. We didn't need to. The note is still in that jacket. I've worn it a few times since, and every time I slide it on I feel the small rectangle of folded paper in the inside pocket. And I don't move it. It's been there long enough now that it would feel wrong to take it out. Margot came back to Alderton Street a handful of times over the months that followed. Once to bring lunch. Once because she'd found an old photograph of the house from the 1920s in a county archive and thought I'd want to see it. I did want to see it. I put it on the wall of the front room. We moved carefully, deliberately, the way the work itself teaches you to move when what you're handling has lasted 100 years and you want it to last another 100. There were things to navigate. Nadia first. We told her plainly, together, over dinner at a restaurant that was neutral enough for a hard conversation. Nadia was quiet for longer than I expected. Then she looked at her mother, then at me and said, I told you to be good to her. I know, I said. So be good to her. Margot reached across the table and took Nadia's hand and neither of them said anything for a moment. Some conversations finish without a last sentence. Richard tried once to make something of it. Said something about impropriety at a family event neither of them could avoid. Margot listened without interrupting. Then she said, we're done talking about this, and moved on, and I watched her do it with the particular admiration you have for someone who has finally stopped asking for permission to take up space. There were hard weeks. There were weeks where the therapy work she was doing spilled out into everything. Made her sharp. Made her go quiet in ways that had nothing to do with me but that I had to learn not to take personally. I did learn. Slowly. The way you learn anything that matters. I finished the Victorian on Alderton Street in March. The last day, before I handed over the keys, I walked through each room alone. The restored crown molding. The original lathe, cleaned and preserved behind fresh plaster. The porch columns, rebuilt from the same wood species, plain to match the original profile exactly. The back gate, which I had rehung on proper hardware the week prior, swung clean and silent when I tested it. Margot came to see it that evening. She walked through room by room the same way she looked at everything, with full attention, touching the door frames, standing in the light from the windows, making it mean something just by looking at it properly. In the front room, she stopped in front of the 1920s photograph I'd left on the wall. You kept it, she said. Seemed like it belonged there. She looked at the photograph for a moment. Then she turned to me, and the evening light was coming low through the front windows behind her. Warm on the plaster, warm on the hardwood floor, warm on her face. You know what you did? She said. I fixed up a house. She shook her head. You found everything worth keeping. I looked at her. The coat she no longer kept so tightly closed. The way she was standing now, not braced, just standing. Yeah, I said. I did. She crossed the room, put her hand flat against my chest, right where the note had been. I covered her hand with mine. The house was quiet around us. Finished the way good things eventually are. Not flawless, not new, just honestly itself, every old joint reinforced, every original detail preserved. The whole of it solid in a way it hadn't been when I found it. Some buildings wait a long time to be understood. Some people do too. I think about the note sometimes. The way she'd written it by hand instead of a text. The way she'd folded it in thirds. The way she'd passed it to the photographer instead of walking it across the room herself. because walking it across the room would have meant seeing my face when I read it, and she wasn't ready for that yet. All that care, all that precision. Even in a moment of risk, she was meticulous. That's her. That's still her. It hasn't changed. What's changed is that she doesn't fold the whole of herself in thirds and hand it off to someone else to carry across the room anymore. She walks it there herself. She hands it to me directly, and I take it. That's the whole story. It started in a corridor outside an old estate venue. A woman who needed a steady presence and a man who knew how to provide one. And it became something neither of us would have written down at the beginning. I don't think the best things are ever predictable. I think they're just the result of paying enough attention for long enough that eventually you recognize what you're looking at.